Well, anyway, hey, so life after death, you say that you've interviewed hundreds of people, it says here, parapsychologists, medical doctors, psychologists, quantum physics, and researchers about the true nature of the reality. Why did you start researching life after death, Stephen?
Oh, well, because I had I guess, I didn't realize what it was at the time, but I had a near death experience when I was in my mid 20s. And I was very sick with the flu, and I guess I did some things I shouldn't have done, and I just lay down in my bed and it started spinning like it was a helicopter blade taking off, and I popped out of my body, and I next thing I knew, I was up near the ceiling examining the paint up there and the little crevices with all the dirt and stuff in them, and thinking that the ceiling needed to be painted. And I looked down and I saw my body on the bed. Well, I kind of had an epiphany at that moment because I realized that I wasn't my body, and I'd always thought I was because I was brought up in a family that subscribed to the idea if you couldn't see it under a microscope, it didn't exist, and that the brain created your consciousness, and when you died, that was it. You was like turning off a lamp or pulling a plug on a vacuum cleaner. So I realized at that point that I wasn't my body, and I it started me on a quest that I've been on ever since to try to figure out what's true. What are we? And I think I've come to the conclusion that we're spiritual beings and we're having a physical experience, and that really this physical reality is not our home, that we come from someplace else and we come into this reality and we stay here for a while and then we go back home.
Mm.
So that's kind of the
So,
conclusion I came to after all those interviews and everything else.
so you died of the flu?
Well, it was very brief. It probably, and there were some other things that went along with it. I'm kind of embarrassed to say that what happened is that I was a bachelor living with two other guys in an apartment in Baltimore, Maryland. And I was upstairs. I really nursing this flu. It was a Saturday night. And of course, when you're about 25 years old, you don't want to be doing that on a Saturday night. And I heard some people coming in to the apartment downstairs, and pretty soon there was a party going on. So I was feeling pretty bad, but I got up and I put some clothes on and I went downstairs and I had a few drinks and probably did some things I shouldn't do. And then suddenly I just felt horrible, and I kind of knee walked back up to my bedroom. I flopped down in the bed, and before in a couple of seconds, things were just spinning around and I just sort of popped out of my body. So I'm not sure I didn't go through a tunnel. I didn't go into the light, but I looked at myself down on the bed, and that was when I realized something was not what I thought it was. I mean, I thought I was my body, but I'm not. I'm my consciousness.
Yeah.
That's who I am.
But
So
you did come back. You were able to
I
make it
went,
back.
it lasted, I don't know how long, but it wasn't more than a couple minutes. And the next thing I knew, I woke up the next morning, but it was very vivid, it was something that was so vivid that I still remember it clearly, and certainly did the next morning. And that really is what got me started on this quest to figure out what life is all about and what reality is real. People think I was raised in a school, and I think all of us were, if we took science, it told us that the only thing that exists is matter. But of course, Einstein said matter is energy and energy is matter, and that's true. I think what really everything is energy, and that it's really all comes from consciousness. And that's one of the things I learned from the quantum physicists that I talked to, and reading about that, is that they think that everything comes from a unified field. Well, I think that unified field somehow produced consciousness, and that's what produces reality, rather than the other way around, where most scientists nowadays think that matter creates consciousness, because there couldn't have been consciousness until a brain came about, and that, of course, they think came through evolution. And so you had to have, before you could have intelligence and consciousness, you had to have a brain, which meant you had to go through all those steps of evolution.
Hmm. Do
And
you
I don't think that's the way it was. I think it's the other way around.
do you think consciousness is local?
I think consciousness is universal. I think everything has some degree of consciousness. That the ground of being, if you will, is consciousness itself, and that's where it comes from. Now, I've talked to quantum physicists who believe that, who say that. That's not the popular view now, but I think those who do think that are the ones who are right. And in one of my books, I get into that about the quantum theory and there's all kinds of evidence that minds are connected. That everything from research into ESP to the idea that some psychics can communicate with people who have passed away. There's been a lot of research done on that. Double-blind research that indicates that yes, they can give accurate information about people who have passed away. So, a lot of evidence that really consciousness is everywhere. That it is non-local, and that even ours is non-local. That our brains are receptors of consciousness, like a cell phone or radio that integrates it somehow with our body. And that's how we come into this reality to experience the physical world and the realm, and that's. But we're doing it like we're divers in going down in the deep sea ocean with the diving suit. Our diving suit happens to be our body. So there you go.
Well, Stephen, let me mention this little tidbit to you. In the Bible, there's a scripture that says that if something doesn't happen, the rocks will cry out. And then I think it might be in Psalms or somewhere. I'm not sure. Somebody can put it in the live chat. But there's another one where it says, where God commanded, I think he commanded Aaron to speak into a rock to get water out of it. So there's a couple times that rocks are mentioned as if they were beings or they had a consciousness themselves. What do you think about that?
I think that everything, to some degree, is consciousness. Now, a rock is probably one of the least conscious things around, but at the very subatomic level, it's consciousness that creates that rock. And that rock has some amount of consciousness, very little, I guess, at least in terms of how you and I would be able to communicate with it.
Yeah.
But I think everything is conscious.
Mm-hmm. Well, I got to admit, man, when I was by a seashore one time, I took a rock and I smashed it, and I had a little bit of guilt complex there. I was thinking, man, I could have hurt that rock. Hey, just joining us in the live chat now is DS Shot, Jam Zach, and Tammy Hall. Welcome to the program. Those of you watching the program, if you have a question for tonight's guest, Stephen Martin, talking about life after death or consciousness, or if you've had a personal experience, put it in the live chat, and our moderator, Jade, will get it over here to us. So, Stephen, so I've got in the background all these books. I could barely get them into the frame, but we got them all in there. So are you always writing books?
It's pretty much what I do. I spent a whole career in the advertising business, but for the last 25 years, I've been doing a lot of writing, and now that's pretty much what I do. That write, and I also do some editing, and I do some ghost writing. If somebody needs a book ghost written, you should contact me through my website because I'm looking for some work in that regard. But that's pretty much what I do. And you showed all those books off my website. That's very nice of you to do that.
Well, there they are.
Maybe somebody will see something what they want to read. Go to my website and you can click on the thing that says books, and it'll take you to that page that you've got up there.
Okay, so I've been doing these programs since 2004. I've interviewed over 1,000-something people, made 1,000 shows. So if I need a ghostwriter, you just write it and tell me what I did or what I learned. I mean, can you do all that?
Well, the way I work, Daniel, is that you and I need to have a long conversation about what you want to write about. And what I do is probably after 2 or 3 conversations is put together an outline and make a recommendation about, how that would flow in terms of chapters and so forth. And I'd send it to you, and we'd go back and
Oh,
forth till we got something we agreed on.
okay.
And then once we had an outline, we'd just schedule some times to talk, and we'd talk through it. And I'd record everything, and then I'd start writing the chapters and sending them to you, and you tell me what you like and don't like,
Okay.
and how you want to change it or whatever. And we
Okay.
go back and forth till we have a book written.
Okay.
And I've done a number of them that way.
Okay. All right. We have a question for you. It says, what are the critical brain regions for consciousness?
Well, the brain itself is I'm not the only person who thinks this. The University of Virginia has been studying this whole issue, their medical school, in a division called the Division of Perceptual Studies, DOPS, Division of Perceptual Studies. And they have come to the conclusion that the brain does not create consciousness, that the brain is a receiver of consciousness that integrates it with the body. So to say that what part of the brain creates consciousness is, according to them, there isn't a part that creates it. It's only parts that receive it. Now, different parts deal with different things, like, the visual part that comes in through your eyes, and the, hearing and so forth. There are different parts of the brain for different functions. But again, it's all a receiver, it's receiving the consciousness, not creating it.
So where is the source?
The source is the spiritual you, the part of you that is the spiritual being that exists and will always exist. You're an eternal spiritual being. Think you want to say you're a ghost. Well, maybe when you leave your body, you are but you're part of this. What I call infinite mind. Some people would call God, but
Okay.
to me, it's the same thing. They're synonymous. We're all part of that, and we think we're separate because we have been born and we've grown up and we've got an ego and that's developed. We've got memories about our childhood, and we've got a job, and so we identify with what we do, and that makes us think we're separate individual beings. And I guess in a way we are, but we're still connected to that and part of that infinite mind that creates everything. It creates you and me, it creates the moon and the stars, it creates everything there is. And we're part of it. We're an extension of it. We're windows on it. So when you think about yourself and you say, who am I? You kind of are able to step back and even kind of think about yourself and see yourself like being on your shoulder, looking at yourself, going about your daily tasks. That's who you are, that consciousness that is really above and beyond just your everyday mind and being caught up in the way things are going. When you can step back and think about your own existence, and that's who you are,
Mhm.
that part of you that's able to do that.
Okay, we've got a number of questions coming in for you. Here's one here. Here it says from Smoke C, and he says, Stephen, where is our consciousness really stored, since it can't seem to really exist in our bodies after we are dead?
Yeah, no, it doesn't exist in your body after you're dead. It leaves your body. There have been so many reports of near-death experiences, thousands of them. Uh, you're it's hard to describe, but it's non-local. It's not in a place. It's part of this infinite mind that is everywhere, and you're part of that. So when you pass over to the other side, you will still consider yourself separate from everything, but you're really going into a realm that's non-physical, that's non-local, and you're going to meet your uh, friends and family who've gone before. They'll probably come to greet you. You may have guides, what people would call maybe guardian angels, who've been around you for forever, practically, in every lifetime you've ever had. And but you're not in a place, so to speak. You're in a non-physical realm, a mental realm, a realm that is really mind, and that's not in a particular place. It's everywhere.
Okay.
It's in another dimension.
Okay. Another question. All right, we've got lots more questions. But Yahweh first says, Stephen, do you case studies on NDE experiencers?
Did I do case studies?
Yes.
I've spoken to a number of people who have had near-death experiences, and I had a show kind of like this for about 3 years where I would frequently have uh, near-death survivors on and talk about what they've done. And yeah, I've talked to dozens of people that had near-death
Is there
experiences.
a
And
common thread that the experiencers talk about, Stephen?
yeah, there are some common threads that uh, usually there are they are very different, but the common threads are the first thing that happens is you realize that you're outside of your body and you're able to see what's around you. You see your body, you see your if you're in a hospital room for if you're being operated on, you'll see the doctors and the nurses. You'll be able to hear what they're talking about and see what they're doing. But then you typically feel drawn toward, most people describe it as a light, and it feels like they're going through a tunnel toward this light, where they will come upon usually somebody that they know who's already passed, who's gone before, who will be greeting them. Sometimes, though, they may uh, describe it as an angelic being. They might say it's Jesus or some other, depending on what their religion is, some other figure from their religion. And then they go on to have a typically they have a past life review once they've reached that other gone into that light.
Mm-hmm.
And that past life review will be, they describe it as a panoramic kind of view of everything that's ever happened in their life. And even though time doesn't really exist over there the way it does here, they are somehow able to experience everything that's ever happened to them, they say. And they not only feel what they felt when different events happened, but they feel what other people felt because of what they said or did
Mm.
in that event.
So you're saying if somebody inflicted pain on somebody else, then um, they're going to feel that pain?
They're going to feel the pain, they're going to feel the anguish or the suffering they caused. It's kind of a learning experience. And what I'm told by people, and a number of people who have described this to me, is that they're not judged by anybody. It's not like God is standing there and judging you or an angel or somebody. There are beings there, but they're really there to support you and help you get through this because it can be a very,
I
emotional,
would imagine it would.
obviously, emotional kind of experience. But it's really a learning experience. You learn from what you did, and hopefully that'll stick with you in your soul somehow, and so that you'll know better than to do it when you come back. Because one of the things that the University of Virginia has found is that reincarnation is a very real thing, and that most of us have had many lives, and probably will have many more before we ever get to stay over there on the other side. Because
Hmm.
Earth, I think, is a school. It's a place we come to learn, and when we have that past life review, we see what we did and what we did right
Mm-hmm.
and what we did
Mm-hmm.
wrong
Mm-hmm.
and what we decisions we could have made that would have changed things.
Mm-hmm.
It's all a great learning experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's not being judged. It's not being
Mm-hmm.
punished.
Mm-hmm.
It's a learning experience. That's
Okay.
how it's described to me by
Okay. Let
practically
me ask.
everybody who's had it.
Okay. Let me ask something, Stephen. So let's just say you screwed up somewhere in his life. You hurt somebody, but then you go make it right best you can. Is that erased, or you still got to look at it over the other side?
I think that I don't claim to know the answer to that question, but I would think that if you go try to make it right, that's going to make it a whole lot better, and that you're not going to, especially if if you make that gesture, I think it's important to do that.
Mhm.
Let me tell you, I gave a talk at a Unity Church a few years ago, and we were talking. This subject came up about the past life review and how you feel and experience what other people experienced when you did something, whether it was good, and people felt, grateful. You feel that. If you did something that shouldn't have done, and people were hurt by it, you'll feel that. This guy came up to me after that talk, and he said that his friend had had a past life review, had gone through a near-death experience, and before that in his life, this man who went through that had been in an auto accident that somebody had pulled out of a side street, run a stop sign, and crashed into him. And the guy got out and was so angry that this guy had run into him that he beat him up. He beat him to a pulp. And so that the man was not able to work afterwards. He was physically damaged to that extent. And when the guy had his past life review and that particular episode was reviewed, he not only felt what the man that he had beat up felt, he felt what the man's family had gone through because of what he had done. The van couldn't work, so they had the wife had to go get a job. The children couldn't go to college. All these kind of terrible ramifications of what he had done. And he felt what all those different people felt as a result of it. So it's a pretty dramatic thing.
Okay. Is there a cord between the body and the soul?
A cord, I think when, people go on out of body trips, and some people do this, it's not something I can do, but there's a outfit in Virginia called the Monroe Institute, and you can go there for a weekend. I think it costs a couple of $1,000, but you can go there for a weekend, and they have these chambers they put you in, and this semi-sync music kind of stuff they use to get you to go out of your body. And so people do that. And I've talked to people who've done that, and they say it's quite fantastic. In fact, one guy I know who does it regularly. But anyway, I think there is a cord that kind of connects you to your body in that situation. I think when you die, that cord is cut. But yeah, there is a cord. And I think probably when you sleep, because when you sleep, you're going into the realm of mind, and a lot of times you have lucid dreams, and they seem so very real. And so I think there is a cord that keeps you connected, however.
All right, let's get to a number of these other questions coming in. And Rose asked a simple question. I think you kind of answered it. It said, how did you go from advertising business to writing about life after death?
Well, it was that. Actually, there were two episodes. The first one I already told you about, where I popped out of my body for a brief time. I'm not sure it was near death, but it was certainly I was out of my body because it was so vivid and clear. But later on, about 10 years later, that had gotten me started on trying to figure out what everything was about. What is life about, and what is I'm not my body, so what am I? I joined the Rosicrucian Society or order, which is a society of mystics that study metaphysical laws. I went through all their courses and rose to an adept, they call it. And I read everything I could read. I remember I read Life After Life by Raymond Moody.
Yeah.
He was a doctor, is a doctor.
Yeah,
who
we had him on the show.
When in medical school, he interviewed people who had near-death experiences and wrote a book about it. It was the first one back in probably 40 years ago. And so I'd done all that. And then one afternoon, it was a beautiful late spring day, and I was happily married. I had a healthy child. I was relaxing on a kind of a chaise lounge outside. And I had this kind of mystical experience where I seemed to kind of somehow merge with the infinite, what I would call the infinite mind. And it was just a mind blowing thing where it's very hard to describe. I write about it in one of my books, where I could think about something and I'd know all the answers, Somehow it was just, I had somehow merged with the infinite mind. And it probably lasted, I don't know, 5 minutes. And then I came back, but that really got me going. And that's, I guess, was the other thing that happened to me that got me so interested in this subject that I would go to my job at the advertising agency and do it and all that. But I'd also get up in the morning at 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock and I'd write for an hour before I went to work. And then finally I sold my interest in my business and really started doing it pretty much full time. And I've been doing it for the last 20 years.
Okay. By the way, welcome to the chat, Karen Lee. Stephen, freely speaking, says, what is the self? Who is the I behind our eyes?
That is an excellent question, a wonderful question. And probably what I'm going to say here is going to get a lot of people wondering and maybe upset a lot of people. But the I behind that you're talking about, the self, is the source. It is the infinite mind. We are each a window on the infinite mind, and we are all the self expressing itself in a different way. And the self experiences itself through you and me and everything that is alive, that is in any way conscious. And so the self is the source. You have a higher self that has been developed over many incarnations and will continue on forever and eventually reunite with the self. But at the core, at that back of your mind place, that I am. Remember when Moses went up on the mountain and he said he met God? It was, I am who I am. And that is who you are. You are the I am. We are each the I am. We're each a window on the I am.
All right, let's get to this question here. Have you or anyone you have interviewed or talked to anyone on the other side?
I have not, but I have certainly talked to psychics who communicate with people on the other side. Don't really talk. It's more impressions that come through that they put into words. The way beings on the other side communicate is through telepathy. We don't have vocal cords. We don't have a body to make the sounds. So it's mind-to-mind communication. Mm-hmm. And so someone who has passed on, who's communicating through a psychic who's able to pick up on that, is sending impressions that the psychic then translates into words. So, but I've talked to a number of people who are able to do that.
Okay. We have this from Bear, who gives us a report called the Bear Report every week. It says, Stephen, what is the most unusual life after death experience you've heard of?
Oh, well, I once interviewed this gentleman who was a preacher, a pastor in Tennessee. And he became a pastor because the man was from Jamaica, he told me, and that when he lived in Jamaica, he was a member of a gang, one of those bad gangs, like M13 or something like that, who do horrible things. And he had a near-death experience while he was part of that gang, and he told me that he went to hell and that it was the most horrible thing he could imagine or he had ever experienced. And that's why he left Jamaica and he came to the United States and he went to seminary and he's now a preacher. So I don't think that there is a hell that's permanent, but I do think that if you feel like if you're a bad guy and you think you ought to go to hell. I think you will do that, at least for a while.
Okay. So I'm going to ask people in the live chat: do any of you watching the program feel like you should go to hell? Speaking of that, Stephen, let's go ahead and check the poll results. Poll question: what happens when you die? And here's the results. 31% say you go to another dimension. 18% says you vaporize into nothing, and 12% says you go to heaven for judgment.
Well, I think the 31% is right, and I think the 8% ought to read at least one of my books because they'll find out that that's not true. And I've got a lot of evidence that I lay out, page after page. Mm-hmm. The ones who go to heaven and say judgment, in a way that's true. You do go to that past life review, but nobody judges you. You judge yourself.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. I think the Bible says if you judge yourself, you shall not be judged. All right, let's get to this question here. It says from Smoke C, do the sun and moon play a role in our journey from death into this life to the afterlife?
We're getting into astrology here, do the planets, when you're born under certain, I'm a Taurus, okay? And I guess I am kind of a plodding bull-like creature in some ways, played football in college and stuff like that. But I would say there are people who think that the planets and so forth have, and the moon and the stars and would have a effect on us, and maybe they do. And I've talked to astrologists and I've had my charts done and all that sort of stuff just to see what it was all about, but I don't really have a answer for that. I don't know. I think that it's possible that it has something to do. I don't think it's anything that is so powerful that we can't overcome it. Mm-hmm. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Let's get to this question here. Do animals go to heaven?
I'm told that people who have a pet, a dog, for example, that they're very close to, that yes, that they meet up with the dog when they go there.
Right on. Let's get to this question here. There are many cognitive functions that take place in the absence of consciousness. What is the function of consciousness? What are experiences for?
Well, it's true that there are many functions that take place that are subconscious, like breathing and your heart beating and things like that. But it's still consciousness that's causing that. It's just not you're conscious. You're not conscious of it. But what is the purpose of the experiencing and coming to this realm? It's to learn. It's to evolve. I think that the whole purpose of life and life on earth and life in the physical realm is to evolve. For those I'll give an example. I think that the Groundhog Day movie with Bill Murray, where a lot of people have seen that, and how he starts out in the movie as a real jerk and he treats everybody terribly and he's, right. Just a jerk. Right. Well, Groundhog Day after Groundhog Day, he's stuck there in Pontiac, PA, or wherever it is, because of a snowstorm. And the next morning he wakes up, he thinks it's going to be February 3rd. It's not, it's February 2nd again. And everything happens just as it happened before, only he reacts to it either the same way or differently. And eventually, after what seems like almost an eternity of February 2nd, he does everything right, and he treats people with respect, and he treats people with kindness, and he's helpful, and he gets people out of jams instead of pushing them down into the mud and all that sort of stuff. And that after he lives that day in the right way, he gets to move on to February 3rd. And I think that's what's happening to us here in this realm where we come here and we have all kinds of obstacles that we have to overcome. We have problems. We have, financial problems, we have love problems, we have work problems, we have all,
Hmm.
and it's like we're meeting all these obstacles, and when we eventually, and we learn from them.
Hmm.
When something terrible happens to you, it's awful when you're going through it. But once you get through it and you're on the other side, you often look back and say, well, I'm a better person
Right, right,
because of what happened.
right, right. As long as you're
I
still
learned
alive,
from it and I grew from it.
as
And
long
I
as you
think that's what we're doing here. We're learning and we're growing.
as long as you're still alive after that, where you talk
Yeah, exactly.
when you talk about lessons. I was thinking of Scrooge, how the Ebenezer Scrooge had the three ghosts come to visit him, and then there's one line in there kind of has a lot more meaning now. It says, perhaps we need to decrease the surplus population. Sounds remarkably like some things going on today, but we won't go there with that one. All right,
All
Azur
right.
says,
Yeah, you're right. That's Scrooge. That's a great movie. That's a great story. I mean, he learns
yeah, he does.
from his experiences.
He does learn, and he does get on the other side, and he is a better person for it. And that's now see that's something I've always said, Stephen, is that December 26th in America is the meanest day of the year because everybody's heading to the mall to return the crappy gift they got. They're all mad and they all feel like they're number one and everybody's in their way. So there's honking and pushing and shoving. People are returning stuff they stole during the year, demanding cash back. You got people at the registers, cashiers, they've got to take them. People coming in with no receipts. It's a nightmare. So what tells me is December 25th for a lot of people doesn't change them at all. December 25th, the feeling that you have should be every day, and you should be nice to people every day. But immediately, man, the 26th, boom, everybody's back at the mall, and it's a madhouse, and that's a place you do not want to be. They didn't learn anything. All right, so here's one. It says, are your dreams connected to your spiritual afterlife?
I think that they can be. I think that often dreams, though, are trying to communicate something. Your subconscious mind or your soul is trying to communicate something to you, and it's usually in some sort of symbolism. I know people. In fact, one of the people that I interviewed is a kind of person who interprets dreams and has a whole course that she gives on dreams and how to lucid dream and how to interpret your dreams and so yeah, I think it's all somehow connected, but mostly I think it's to when you dream something, and especially if you dream it more than once, if it's a recurring dream, your subconscious mind is trying to tell you something, trying to get something through to you that you're not seeing on a conscious level.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to try to figure out what that is. And it's going to be symbolism. It's not, if you're dreaming of a car that you own and it's breaking down, and you've got a breakdown with your car or flat tire or whatever in the dream, it's probably telling you something's wrong with your body that you need to have checked out, because your car is your vehicle to get around,
Okay.
and your body is your vehicle to get around. So that's the kind of symbolism that your dreams use to communicate with
All
you.
right. Well, let me just throw this out there. Anybody in the live chat watching the program, if you have a dream, if you had a recurring dream, put it in a succinct sentence and then send it in. Let's see what we can do with it. All right. I have another question for you. It says, well, let me get over to it. Is there any value in us remembering our past lives, or is it best to avoid it?
Well, I think there can be a value. I don't think it's necessary to do it or even to try, but you know, there was a gentleman back in the 20th century, Edgar Casey. He was called the sleeping prophet, and he would go into a trance, self-induced trance. He did it twice a day, the morning and the afternoon, when he really got going on this. And people would send him questions about problems they had. That usually it was a physical problem, but often a physical problem or even a kind of a mental problem, a kind of karmic problem, where maybe why do I always seem to attract someone to me who's ends up abusing me or physically or psychologically, that kind of a question.
Mm-hmm.
And he would often, and to his own surprise, because he didn't believe in reincarnation, while he was in this trance would say, well, that problem stems from a life that you had when such and such and such and such happened. And it's something that you're still dealing with in this life. And that would be helpful to them because they would see what had gone wrong before that they hadn't corrected. Maybe they didn't, in the case I just gave you, maybe they had a low opinion of themselves and for some reason or other, and they kept attracting people who had the same low opinion of them. So it can be helpful if you've got a issue or problem that you're dealing with. It seems to be recurring, and you can't seem to get past it.
Just a slightly political question, not too much, but in a lot of major cities, people keep voting for politicians that don't change anything for the better in their city, and their neighborhoods get worse and worse. Crime, looting, shootings just continue on, but yet they keep voting for the same people. Maybe they're expecting a different outcome, I don't think, but they really don't seem like they're really expecting a different outcome. It's more like they're saying, you go woman, you go man, you go, whatever. They're cheering the same person on, like, you go mayor, but then they got to go back to their house and somebody's shooting out the windows. Is that sort of the complex to where, like, when the Auschwitz prisons, when they opened the prisons, a lot of prisoners, they didn't immediately come out because they had been tortured so long by the Nazis. For one, they didn't even believe they could get out, but they weren't sure. Is that the same sort of thing?
Well, I think it's a mindset that is causing them to repeat. Who was it? Einstein who said the height of stupidity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. But they're so used to voting for that party, and they hear all this propaganda that's put out to them about how the other party is going to be even worse. I guess that's what they're told, and they must believe it. But yeah, I mean, it is the height of stupidity. I agree.
All right.
When people think they're victims, that's the, if whatever you believe you are, if you believe you're a victim, you're going to be a victim because you're going to attract stuff to you that is going to reinforce what you think about yourself. And if you think you're a winner, it goes the other direction. It's what you believe in your heart that really creates your reality around you.
Well, yeah,
and these people are creating that reality around them because they think they're victims. I think.
Well, there's an old saying, and I always get people on it, says you are what you eat. But you know what? Nobody's ever ate a hamburger and turned into a hamburger, but you are what you say. You say, I'm sad. Typically you're sad, you're happy, you can see a smile on their face, I'm angry. You can see the anger on their face. So it does kind of go with you are what you say more than you are what you eat. You're more what you say.
And I would say and you probably say what you think. So you are what you think, if you think you're a victim, if you think people are out to get you, then that's what your reality is going to be.
And we all know people like that, and it's like they revel in the bad things that happen to them. It's like it's a lifestyle, and it's kind of parasitic in a way because they want others to join them in their misery. I'm miserable. Somebody did this to me so many years ago, and they're still talking about it. It's like, man, I don't want to join you there. Okay, I'm over here. I'm in Happy Land, and you're like a succubus, and so get off me. If you got anything good to say, it's just like they're just drawing energy, trying to take me down, take the man down. I can't deal, Stephen.
Absolutely correct. You are, if you're around those kind of people, my advice is, go somewhere else.
Misery loves company is a truism for sure. All right. As far as dreams goes, this person wrote in talking about a dream. See if we can interpret it for him. They say, I'm always in a maze type setting in a mall type area. Any thoughts?
A maze type setting in a mall type area.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing that jumps into my head would be that they're having trouble figuring out where they want to go. I mean, maybe they haven't set a goal for themselves, and they need to do that to move ahead from wherever they are, from whatever their condition in life is. That's just a guess, just sort of the first thing that came to my head.
All right. Thank you, doctor. Um, uh-oh. We're going into controversy land here. Raul says, is there a such thing as astro sex?
Gosh, that's a good one. I like that question. I'd like to know the answer to that myself, but I don't see
Man,
how there could be.
man.
There's nothing physical there.
Mm.
Maybe there's some sort of joy of somehow uniting with someone on the other side. I don't know,
Wow,
but
Stephen, get a little freaky
sex
there.
as we know it would not be possible.
Doing the freak on the other side. Wow. All right.
I think maybe one of the reasons we come here is because, we talked about experience, and that's the reason we come into this physical realm. But, there's eating is something you wouldn't do over there, and there's really good food here if you
Yeah.
find it. And sex is another thing that you probably don't do over there that could be a lot of fun here. So, experiencing is one of the reasons we come here. Probably
Oh
the
man.
reason we come here.
Oh man. I had to put a thought bubble with that one. All right. This is from our. This is about dreams, and this is from our moderator Jade. She says I had a recurring dream of a house with lots of hidden rooms. Loved that house. A dream of house with lots of hidden rooms. What do you say,
I would
doctor?
interpret hidden rooms as being parts of your own psyche that you haven't maybe fully realized are there. We all have a parts of ourselves that we don't that we sort of don't know about or don't want to know about or don't kind of look at.
All right.
And I think could be helpful to really examine our own psyches. And I think that hidden rooms in a house in a dream would be maybe that's what it's telling you, that you ought to maybe take a look. We all have, for example, a shadow side that we often deny, but it's part of us, and you
Okay.
might as well bring it out in the open.
Okay.
And
So that
realize,
reminds me of the original Star Trek series. There was an episode when the evil Captain Kirk, he was split. He's coming through the transporter, and both his feminine side and his mean, angry side came through. Two different people, so they were split. One guy, the nice kind of feminine guy, he couldn't make a decision, but the other guy, he was a terror. And in the end, they had to join the Captain Kirk's back together as a whole. But the theory was that Captain Kirk needs that evil side, as everyone needs that evil side to drive them to do things, to go where they need to go. Otherwise, we would just be like chickens, and we're going to get feathers plucked and thrown into a frying pan.
well, I think that's right. It's part of your psyche. It's part of your whole self, and there's no reason to deny it because it's there. If you deny it, I think it can get you in trouble.
Okay.
All
All right, doctor. We have. I'm having fun with that one. All right. Smoke C says, Stephen, recurring dream. I have wings and I'm flying above the earth in a state of bliss.
That's fantastic.
Sounds like they have some astral sex right there, but in a state of bliss, what's going on?
I think that this person has probably accomplished some things that are pretty terrific, and they subconsciously feel good about themselves. That's wonderful. I've had flying dreams too, when things are going great for me, and I love them. And I once I can remember, like I came down the runway, and I just it's like a B-17 taking off. It was a fantastic feeling, and I think flying dreams tell you that you must be doing something right. You must be being successful at something, and that's good. That's good.
All right. Here's another recurring dream from Jam Zach. It says, Stephen, I have a recurring dream of falling through a certain step in a staircase towards a black and white checkered floor, but would never hit. No matter how hard I would try to avoid the step, I always fall.
Gosh, there must be something going on in that person's life that is that step that they try to avoid but keep falling into. But it apparently has not caused them to a whole lot of damage if they never hit. I don't know. I mean, something that they're in their life that they're it's happening, it's there, but they're able to avoid it or trying to avoid it, but they can't.
Mm. Somebody says they have a recurring dream of me playing a song on my guitar. So that dream could come true. You never know. Um, all right. Here's this. Let's go with a little bit more controversy here. This is from Sneaker. Sneaker says, if we take the clot shot and die, will we be able to talk to others and warn them not to commit the same suicide? I guess they're saying if they die, can they warn people that's still alive not to do something?
They might be able to come tell them somehow. I mean, I know I've had people tell me that when someone died, they appeared to them, for a brief moment. In fact, one of my uncles told me that this was a long time ago, I think when I was a kid, that one of his best friend died, and he didn't know that his friend had died, but his friend came to see him and told him where the key was to the safe deposit box at the bank. And then the next day, my uncle told me that he found out that his friend was dead when he came to it because he had died, an hour or two before that. So I think it is possible. But let me say something about suicide. I have a good friend that I've known for since we were in high school. And when he learned that I was interested in all this, I had a conversation with him, and he told me about something that happened when he was 16 years old. He was lying in his bed at night, and he had some problems that he was dealing with. I won't go into all that, but let's just say that he was contemplating suicide because of this problems that he had. His problem with his mother and his family, a problem with his friends and girlfriend. Anyway, he says that at 3 o'clock in the morning, this guy is a lawyer and head of a big law firm now. This was when he was 16 years old. He's not some Looney Tune, guy. That he was yanked out of his body, taken way up into the sky. He said he could look down in the earth and see the curvature of the earth. He could see the sun coming up over the ocean. And then suddenly something popped and everything was black. And these kind of Christmassy twinkly lights started coming toward him. And he said, "Is somebody there?" And the answer was, and again, this was not vocal cords, but in telepathy, "Yes, we brought you here for a reason." And he said, "Well, why did you bring me here?" He says, "We have something important to tell you." And he said, "Oh, well, what is it?" He said, "The little lights," which he later on said he thinks were his guides or his guardian angels, said, "Your life is your own." And he said, "Oh, my life is my own?" They said, "Yes, your life is," and he said, "Well, else would it belong to?" He said, "No, your life is your own. You can do what you want with your life. If you want to kill your body, if you want to," they didn't say the word suicide, "but if you want to destroy your body, you can do that. But we are here to tell you that if you do that, you're just going to be wasting time." And he said, "Wasting time? Why?" It's because you'll just have to come back and face the same situations again until you get through them. Because once you start on a particular curriculum, you have to see it through to the end. So anyway, he came back to his body and he forgot all about committing suicide. But the point is, I think that's what happens. If you commit suicide, you're going to have to come back and do it again. It's just like the guy, Bill Murray's character in Groundhog Day. He tries committing suicide too, and it doesn't get him out of that. He just has to come back and face the same things again until he gets it right.
All right. Freely Speaking again says, what determines experiences of volition and will?
I'm sorry, repeat that again.
What determines experiences of volition and will? Free will.
Well, I think we all have free will to a certain extent. I mean, obviously, we get into situations where we don't have a whole lot of free will, but theoretically, we have free will. And I think that if will is something that is built up, again, over is part of evolution. That strong will and doing the right thing or whatever is something that we learn, and it becomes a trait.
Well, Stephen,
But beyond that, I don't know.
which is more real, the present life, me and you talking here, or the afterlife?
People who've been through the afterlife experience say that that's much more real than this life. That it's much more vivid, much more I don't know, sharp, real, feeling and being, the whole experience is so memorable. I mean, even after 50 years, somebody will remember it like it was yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this life, it's often like walking in a dream,
Mm-hmm.
You're just kind of going through the motions.
So, in 1 to 10, how certain are you there is an afterlife?
I would give it a 10. I mean, I'm convinced, and I think it's. I just can't imagine how there would not be from everything that I know and I've read and I've people I've talked to and the whole thing. I mean, it's a wonderful thing to not worry about death. Now, I'm kind of like Woody Allen, who said, "I'm not afraid of death. I just don't want to be there when it happens." But
Well, one of the poll question answers, nobody clicked on it, nobody voted for it, but it says, what happens when you die? It says you get boxed or you get blowtorched. So, are you?
well, your body does, but not
Right.
you. You'll
So,
be gone. You'll be.
really, I can see that. You're right. According to this conversation, there's two separate things going on there. So, are you a box guy? Or you blowtorch?
I'm going to do the blowtorch thing.
All right. And where's the ashes going to go?
I'd like them sprinkled on the James River because I live in Richmond, Virginia. The James River runs right through it. And I grew up 2 blocks away. And when I was a kid growing up, I used to go skinny dipping in the river every day in the summer.
Well, kind of risky with the catfish in there, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, there were definitely some catfish out there. But no, yeah, I did. That's where I want to, just scatter my ashes on the James.
Has anyone ever had a near-death experience describe angels with wings on their back?
I don't think anybody sees the wings. They see a being of light, of sometimes a very tall, imposing being, but light emanating from it. But I don't. I've never heard anybody tell me they had wings.
All right, and then we have this here. Are you familiar with Seth Speaks books? And if you are, what's your take on them?
Yeah, I've read at least one of those. Elizabeth, is it Montgomery? Is that her name? Seth Speaks.
Not
She
sure.
was a channel for Seth, who is apparently a more evolved being somewhere who came through her, a non-physical being. Yeah, I'm familiar with them. I think there's something to them. The one book I read of that, I thought I was very interesting, and I thought it sounded like it made sense.
Mhm. All right, and we have this here. Did Lucifer the devil create this simulation dream reality?
No, I don't think it was created by Lucifer. Uh, the Lucifer is an interesting character. I think of the book of Job, and of course, Satan is in that story about Job is not really the devil that we think of. He was the tempter. He was the one who kind of tested people, and so the whole idea of Satan is kind of evolved. And I'm not that familiar with everything in the Bible, but I've read a lot of it, and I've done Bible studies with people. I'm don't see where the Satan that we conjure up in the idea of having a guy with horns and who's going to torture you for eternity. I don't see that in the Bible anywhere. Do you, Daniel?
Not sure about that. In 1799, George Washington, when he died, he requested that he be buried after 3 days. Now, some secularists say, well, that's because he wanted his relatives to have time to be notified. But others say that he wanted it 3 days because he knew Jesus was in the tomb 3 days and rose again. And in case he had favor, he didn't want to be buried down underneath the ground. So he's got a chance to get up off the deathbed, get up and start walking around. So what's your thoughts on that?
Well, back in those days, people would often think someone was dead and they weren't. They were in a coma or something, and they would wake up. Have you ever seen? I'm trying to remember the movie. The one with the railroad. Sean Connery's in it. There's a casket in the movie, and it's got a bell up on top with a string, so that if the guy inside wakes up, he can ring the bell before they bury him. Because people. I think Edgar Allan Poe wrote about people being buried alive.
Well, there is evidence. People have exhumed bodies and found claw marks, scratch marks on the top of the casket.
So that's a good reason to wait 3 days.
Well, that's a good reason not to get blowtorched either, man, because you get blowtorched, you ain't coming back. You have no chance, man. All right. Here's Jay, our moderator. I said, a friend with an NDE said he understood complex math equations when he was away, but when he returned, he lost the knowledge. Is that common?
Absolutely. That is what, I mentioned earlier. I talked about this kind of mystical experience I had where I felt like I merged with the infinite mind for 5 minutes or however long it lasted, and I had the answers to everything. If I'd thought about some complex math problem, I'd have probably had the answer to that. But I didn't remember. I brought some of that back with me, but most of it was gone when I came back to reality.
Yeah, there's a UFO experiencer in Rendlesham Forest in England, I think it was. These two guys saw a craft come down, and they were able to touch it, and they made a report on it. It's kind of a famous event. But later, the guy was able to write out a bunch of ones and zeros, and he wrote it out, and then pages of them, and then it was able to be translated. It was a message from somewhere. Now, some people say it came from the reptilians or the insectoids or somebody up there. Maybe it come from the other side. Who knows? I mean, sometimes you can retain some kind of information. Jim Shook says, Stephen, what about mentally impaired people, retarded, if you will? We don't use those terms anymore. Mentally challenged, is that acceptable? If they will come back and have the same mentality.
Yeah, I think that I've often thought about that. People who are born with some sort of a limited, challenging mental capacity, whatever the politically correct way to say that is. And I think that they're, again, some people are going to, roll their eyes, but I think that we choose to a certain extent our family, our situation, and so forth, because we have certain lessons that we want to try to learn in a particular life. And I think that maybe someone who is born that way is a perfectly formed spiritual being, but they come into a body that's got problems, picking up all the brain power they really have, all the mind that they really have, because they want to experience that for whatever reason. And so it's part of their learning, part of their curriculum that they've chosen for that particular life. So I don't think that they're like that when they leave their body and go back to the other side. They're going to be a perfectly capable and fully formed being.
So then basically, so beyond that, are you suggesting that if somebody had their legs amputated or whatever, that they would be a complete being in the afterlife?
I think they would be. Although it's interesting, I've had an uncle who had one leg missing, was amputated, and he said that he could feel his toes and so forth on that leg, even though it wasn't there anymore.
Sounds like he got the
But yeah,
shot.
I think that they'll be whole when they pass. But one of the things the University of Virginia has found that some of these children who have memories of past lives, and they come back very quickly.
Mhm.
The average child who remembers a past life that they can verify actually was someone who fit that description and so forth is only 15 months between death and birth. So 9 months of that would be pregnancy. So they come back very quickly, but often they'll have some sort of physical defect that they will, fingers missing or a leg missing below the knee, something like that. Often it's they were murdered, and maybe they were shot. There was one case where there was a birthmark on the forehead, and on the back of the head there was this splattered birthmark where it turned out that the previous life the person was shot in the forehead,
Hmm.
and the exit wound would have been the shape of that
Mhm.
birthmark on the back of their head.
Hmm.
So sometimes, I guess, if you're born real quick, real fast after you pass, maybe you'll come back with the.
So let's just say you're John F. Kennedy, and they'll say, well, you're up there wherever you're at. So you're going to be president, but your brains are going to be blown out of your skull. You good with that?
Well, but your brain again doesn't in where your mind is. It's just a receiver.
Yeah,
But
but
no,
to
I
know
mean
is
he might come back. If he came back quickly, he'd come back with a birthmark where the bullet entered, and the bigger birthmark where it exited.
hmm, okay. All right. The bear says, how can there be an afterlife if there's recurring life with reincarnation?
Well, there's a life, and there's between life, and then there's a life. And according to I don't know if I'm supposed to say this. I mentioned earlier that I joined the Rosicrucian
Mhm.
order when I
I
wanted to
mean,
learn more about metaphysics.
yeah.
They say
How they doing
that
over
the
there?
average uh, span is 140 years. So if let's say you live 70 years and you die, you'll spend 70 years before you incarnate again. So it'll be 140 years between births
Mm-hmm.
on average. Now, obviously, that's an average because we just said that the University of Virginia is studying these children with past lives. It's a whole lot quicker for them.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's the reason they remember their past life because
Mm-hmm.
their life is usually cut short some way, murdered, maybe killed in an auto accident, or killed in a war, in
Yeah.
battle, or
So,
whatever, and
so,
they
so
come back quick.
I have in our background one of your books, how science reveals God. But a lot of universities, Stephen, they spend their time trying to disprove that God exists. That everything is scientific, and we don't know everything because the science hasn't proved it yet. But they always want to leave God out of the conversation. Is it because they're fearful that the things they've done in their life would put them in a guilt frame of mind?
That's quite possible. I can't uh, get into their heads to know what they think, but it's certainly that
Certainly not much
scenario
in their
makes
heads.
sense.
It
But
wouldn't take long to get in there.
basically, what happened is, uh, and I go through this in one of my books. How did we get where we are with where science is? Because for millennia, people have believed that there's uh, physical reality, there's this world, and there's heaven or some sort of non-physical world that we go to when we die, and that we can communicate back and forth. Shaman, witch doctors, all the way going back to the earliest human beings that lived in caves believed that. So
Mhm.
how did we get to a point where that's no longer scientifically acceptable? What happened is, I think, back in the 17th century, 1600s, you had witch trials. I've written a book about my ancestor who was one of the Salem witches who was hanged.
Wow.
And uh, so you had people believing all this stuff that was, thought of by intellectuals as superstition. And there was a fellow named Thomas Hobbes, who was an English philosopher, and he wrote a book, The Leviathan. But he said, one of the things he said and maintained was that if God created it, then all there is what God created, which is the earth, which is physical matter. So people who were intellectuals, that spawned the Age of Enlightenment, it's called, where a lot of intellectuals, people like Thomas Jefferson, became what are called deists, which is the great clockmaker theory, where God created the world, created the universe, created the solar system, wound it up and let it go, and is no longer involved in it. That was what they believed in the Age of Enlightenment. Then that was the 18th century. In the 19th century, along comes Darwin, who explains how human beings came about through natural selection, through survival of the fittest. That enabled the scientist types to get rid of God altogether. And that 19th century belief is what most of them are still hanging on to. It's called scientific materialism. The only thing that exists is matter, physical substance. Now, the book you've got up on the screen, How Science Reveals God, disputes that, because if it's true that only matter exists, then intelligence and consciousness could not have existed until evolution produced a brain. But think about something as basic as the DNA molecule, which is the basis of life. The DNA molecule is, as everybody knows, it's this supercoiled thing up in the center of a cell, that if you took that and stretched it out, it would be 6.5 feet long. And what is it? It's computer code. Everybody's seen a printout of somebody's DNA. What that code tells the cell is when and how much and so forth, and how to make proteins at the proper time and in the proper place and so on. So if you got computer code that's 6.5 feet long, how did that come about by accident? It can't have come about. The mathematicians who've calculated the odds on the DNA molecule forming by accident say that it's 1 in infinity that it could happen. Mm-hmm. So there had to be intelligence behind it. And that's just one thing. Mm-hmm. How could an eyeball have developed by accident? How could a kidney have developed by accident?
Right. Which came first?
Anything like that.
Which came first?
How could all the laws of the universe have happened by accident? Mm-hmm. There's got to be intelligence behind it.
Now, Benjamin Franklin was a famous deist, but he's also classically known to say, the older I get, the more I am convinced that God rules in the affairs of men, which is the exact opposite of what a deist believes. So,
he was contradicting the deist idea that God wound it up and let it go and no longer is involved. Yeah. And to me, when you get to an advanced age like you and I are, I don't know, maybe you're not, you realize that you look back at life and things happen in a way, in a pattern, kind of, people you met, things that happened, it doesn't seem to have happened by chance. It seems to have been a story that somebody wrote.
It really does. It really does. And who wrote the story? Did we write the story, or did God write the story? Now, as far as the afterlife goes, it is written in the Bible that, it's appointed unto man to die once, and after that, the judgment. Now, I'm kind of along those lines, because I haven't met anybody who died and came back. So if there's people who are dead and came back, how would I recognize? How would I know? Would I say, haven't I seen you before? Like, did I see you after the funeral that you were in?
Let me first comment on that death and then judgment. That goes along with what people have near-death experiences have. They die and they go and they have their past life review. Mm-hmm. But they come back, to try to do it again. Mm-hmm. Well, I do think, haven't you ever met somebody that you felt like you knew? That you, that you had an instant rapport with, that just kind of seemed like you'd always known them.
Yeah.
And probably you did, because they were somebody from another life that I think we kind of have a group that we hang around life after life with. We might come back in different roles. Sometimes it's your brother, sometimes it's your father, sometimes it's your wife, sometimes it's your sister.
Mm. All right. We have this question here from Southern Boy. Did you hear in the news where 5-MeO DMT, not sure what that is, toad venom, is healing people of PTSD, depression, addiction, and killing of the ego? Is this done through consciousness modification?
I've heard something about that, but I don't know much about it. I think the ego is something that we could all do better with having less of. I mean, I think the egos can get us in a lot of trouble
Mm-hmm.
because the ego's whole what it's all about is survival, and a lot of times it'll lead you into a lot of trouble because of that. You get mad at people and you strike, you fight or whatever. I mean, they really things egos can be a problem.
Have you seen or heard of any definitive physical evidence of the afterlife?
Physical evidence of the afterlife?
Maybe somebody went there and brought something back.
I don't think you could bring anything back. I mean, because it's non-physical over there.
Mm-hmm.
The only physical thing would be the hundreds of cases that the University of Virginia has, and Ian Stevenson put all these in books. He's written a half a dozen books of the physical issues with people's bodies. Like I said, the fingers missing. There was one case where a guy was shot in the ear, with a shotgun and died, and he came back had a cauliflower. When he was reborn, he had a cauliflower ear. I mean, these things that were holdovers from the previous life, or the way they died in the previous life. That would be something that would be coming back into physical reality from non-physical.
So where do ghosts fit in this?
I think ghosts that hang out in buildings or castles or graveyards or wherever are. Let me tell you a story about. I think that people often die, particularly if they're atheists and they don't believe in an afterlife, and they kind of hang around in this dimension that's closest to, called the astral plane, that's closest to the physical world, and they can cause problems. Spirit possession and so forth really does happen. I've talked to psychiatrists who've dealt with that. But let me tell you a story.
Okay.
I had this friend. I used to go to France a lot. My first wife was French, and we'd go over there in the summer for 2 or 3 weeks for many years. And I had a friend over there who inherited this great big house in the country. He lived in Paris, but he inherited this house, and he had made some money in the stock market, so he decided to fix up this place, this old place. Hadn't been lived in probably 30 or 40 years, maybe longer. But anyway, he and his wife would go out there, and the workmen would work, and they'd spend the night and on the weekend or whatever. And when they spent the night, he would hear this screaming sound. It was right before he, would drift off to sleep. He'd feel like he hear in his mind someone calling for help, and it happened every night when he was there. So finally, he got up and he went looking for it, and he decided it must be coming from the basement, from the cellar of this house. So the next day, he got the workmen who were there, doing something with the roof or whatever, got them to go down there, and they looked around. They found this one wall that looked a little newer than the other ones, and they ripped it out, and there was a skeleton behind that wall. And they took the skeleton out, and they gave it a Christian burial, and they never heard the night noises again. But he believes that what happened is somebody was bopped on the head, put behind that wall, they bricked it up, and he must have come to, like the guy in the casket that you were talking about, right, scratching to get out. And he had been behind that wall, didn't realize he was dead because he died back there, and had been screaming for help ever since. Wow. And once they opened the wall up and brought him out, then he didn't need to do that anymore, and buried him.
And I know who did it.
Who did it?
Maxwell Silverhammer. bang, bang, in the back of his head. It's written right in the Beatles song,
Exactly.
man.
Yeah, that's what happened.
It's written
Exactly.
right in there. But no, that's a great story, man. I mean, geez, the guy didn't know he was dead and been screaming ever since. So how do we
Yeah,
get this guy in the grave to get him to quit haunting the living?
that's right. Well, I think it could happen. I saw a story or read a story. No, I saw it. It was a YouTube video not long ago about this guy who spoke through a medium. So like what's her name, Montgomery, who wrote the Seth stories.
Mm-hmm.
She would. Well, anyway, this guy was killed in World War II. No, World War One, and he described how he what happened, and he didn't know he was dead. He was in a charge. When they come over the top out of the trenches and they run toward the other trench, and he was shot. I guess didn't know it, thought he was still running, and went on and on for. It was an interesting story. Let's put it that way. So I think it's possible.
Do
You
you have
could
any
be
more?
dead and not
You
know
got any
it.
more ghost stories before we get to the end of this?
Oh, let's see. Ghost stories. I mean, it's mostly stories about people who have near-death experiences. If people are interested in that, there's a nonprofit organization called IANS, International Association of Near-Death Survivors, I
Mm-hmm.
guess, yeah, NS.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a YouTube channel. And if you go to YouTube and just put that in there, IANS,
Mm-hmm.
you'll get all kinds of YouTube videos of people who describe their near death
Mm.
experiences.
You
Some
know,
of them pretty
we were
fantastic.
talking about that. Didn't know he was dead. It reminded me of that movie. It's called The Others, um, and I think Nicole Kidman's in it. And
Hmm.
her and her two daughters are in this like hotel or this big house, and then they're actually dead, and they don't know it. And somebody's coming over to buy the house, and they thought that the living people was haunting them, but they was really haunting the living people. Now that goes back to the astral sex thing too, because her husband who went off to war came back, and they had sex. Now she was dead, so I mean, there's some crazy stuff going on in that house right there. But in the end, but then it turned out what happened was she killed the two children, and so she was trapped in this zone. And it sounds so. There you go. But you also said something phenomenal too, Stephen. That atheists they're going to get stuck somewhere because
Yeah,
if they go up, they're going to get kicked out that way. And they go down, they probably don't want them. They don't want them either. So they're going to be stuck in some kind of nether world.
I think they better read my book. Go to my website, shmartin.com, and you see all these books up behind you. Pick one of those and read it. The one there, kind of to the left, there's two of them, the woman with the suitcase and the other one going through the hole there.
Okay.
Those are the two books to read about life after death.
Okay. Okay. I see them. And what's the titles? Can you see the titles?
Well, the one on the left there is Life After Death, Powerful Evidence You Will Never Die. And this one up here is a good one, too.
This one here.
Uh, yeah, Afterlife, The Whole Truth. That's actually this book plus another one.
Yeah.
Yeah, shmartin.com is my website. And go up to the top and click on books, and you'll get to that page.
Okay. Well, Stephen Hawley Martin, we're at the end of the broadcast. Any final things you'd like to say about being on the show or anything you want to say? Go ahead.
Just that, when you realize that you're an eternal being, it changes your life and makes you look at life differently and can make it a whole lot better for you. I tell you that. It really does. It has for me.
Okay. All right. I appreciate you being on the show. Can we have you on again sometime?
Absolutely. I enjoyed it, Daniel.
All right, Stephen, I appreciate you spending some time with us this evening. I'll send you some links after we edit and upload it on YouTube, and we'll talk again.
Very good. Thank you.